Hello, welcome to WD18, the Watford fan channel. Welcome to another video. It's the first of the Ranieri era, and it's finished in defeat, and it started with defeat under Claudio Ranieri, a final defeat at Vicarage Road against Liverpool in the early kickoff on Saturday. The worst thing about an early kickoff is if you lose, and if you lose badly like we did yesterday, it kind of does ruin the rest of your weekend. But we're going to be breaking down it was a horror show, wasn't it, from Watford, and credit to Liverpool because they deserved all 3 points and thoroughly smashed us in complete honesty. But if you're watching this live, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to WD18, comment down below your thoughts in the live chat, and we'll throw it over to myself and none other than Mr. Sam Yuko. Sam, did it ruin your weekend yesterday, the defeat?
Oh, I was in such a bad mood yesterday. Still, I woke up this morning and I just wasn't, because I mean, we'll talk about this, but it's not necessarily the defeat I have a problem with, because I think realistically, I know I said I was confident beforehand, but I think, you can't be too surprised when you lose or even when you get hammered at home to Liverpool. It was the manner of the defeat though for me. Everything about the whole day yesterday, I think you expect, new manager bounce. You expect the Vic to be rocking. It was dead in there, to be honest with you. Nothing could really got going in there. Perhaps that was kind of the early kickoff, sort of no one was too up for it at that time of day. But the whole day just felt really, I don't know the right word for it, but it was it was just very flat the entire day. And then obviously we go 1-0 down really early on in the game. Really poor defending, which we'll talk about, and pretty much just gets worse from there. So depressing day overall, and I suppose it's a form of therapy for us to break this down now.
Yeah, it's cathartic, isn't it? It's because you get to dissect what went wrong, which isn't good, but I think getting it out in the open is always the best way to do it. Sam, look, I think we'll get straight into it in terms of Watford's performances. You mentioned in terms of it just being a really weird aura around Vicarage Road yesterday. I expected it not to be bouncing because it is an early kickoff, and it's very rare to have an early kickoff where everyone's absolutely up for it. But at the same time, I expected there to be a bit of a buzz around Vicarage Road. And within the first couple of minutes, we worked out the way Watford is set up. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be, it turned out to be a 3 at the back that kind of transitioned into a 4-4-2 out of possession. It was
Jacob, I've got no idea what the formation was yesterday at any point. I don't think the players knew. We're not going to go 2-in on Ranieri first game, but he got it awfully wrong yesterday.
So do you want to maybe just highlight what was particularly poor about what the way we set up, but also how we played overall?
So I think for me, when I saw the lineup, I was surprised. I was excited by it. I think I mentioned that, but I was excited by the team when I saw it. It was first start for Kiko in the Premier League. I think it was Sissoko as the captain. Interesting to see Rose and Messina both playing. I thought it'd be a 3 with Messina at centre half. So I was excited to see what it would be, and I thought that, perhaps to catch Liverpool off guard, because they probably weren't expecting it either. But it was just so, I think we could tell from about minute 1 that it was completely all over the place. The players didn't know what they were doing. I think Ranieri put it down to nervousness. I put it down to, I don't want to say tactical incompetency, because he's a brilliant manager, it seems to be. He's won Premier League with Leicester. He's been all over the world, but he got it so wrong. And I think for me, it sums it up after we conceded the first goal. I think the ball got passed back to Troost-Ekong, who smashed it straight into Mane, who nearly went and scored straight away again. The whole performance was just awful. Everything about it. I mean, we're not gonna talk about the last 15-20 minutes when we did improve, because the game was done at that point. The same thing. We said the same thing at Brighton. People go, all right, positive. We played well for the last 15 minutes. The game was done. Liverpool didn't need to try. They took off Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andrew Robinson because they didn't need to try anymore.
Yeah. And much of that was a full strength Liverpool side yesterday as well. That's the scary thing.
Can I just say a quick note on Liverpool? Best team in the world at the moment. Mo Salah's the best player in the world at the moment. Completely untouchable. Brilliant side. They didn't have to be that absolute best yesterday, but they completely swept us aside, and absolutely brilliant from them.
You mentioned, Sam, about tactically Ranieri get it wrong, and look, I think to an extent I got it wrong. I read a few pieces, particularly there was one from Luons, which was really good about his Sampdoria teams and how they were very on the front foot and really aggressive out of possession. And he basically, I actually spoke to a Sampdoria fan as well, and they said they were playing some awful football before he came in. And he turned it around and made them a really likeable team to watch and very aggressive on the front foot. Whereas what we saw yesterday was a very passive, nervous, as Ranieri described it, and we were very reactive. We weren't proactive, and there was an element, Sam, where I absolutely understand it being difficult to beat, but there is also an element of you do have to press and you do have to take advantage of when there's a sloppy Liverpool touch. And we would just look very scared of Liverpool. So how much do we apportion that to the manager, and how much do we apportion that to the players in terms of their performances?
I think it's very clear that confidence is at rock bottom at the moment. I don't know why that is, because
I
don't know why that is, but there was zero confidence in there yesterday. We're missing certain sorts of players in there. I think if we're going to talk a bit more about Ranieri, but I think there are so many players in that team who simply aren't good enough. We'll talk about Ben Foster later on. I think the one that has gone under the radar this season who's been abysmal is Kiko Femenia. It's been arguably one of our worst players this season. I think Cathcart and Troost-Ekong, big questions there. Adam Messina, Juraj Kutska was shocking yet again for about the 5th week in a row. A lot of questions there with the players. So Cisco's obviously working with those players. Not Cisco. Ranieri's having to work with those players. But at the same time, I think if we're looking at some positives from yesterday, I think he would have learned who's not good enough for this squad rather than who is good enough, and he can go from there. So I don't think we'll see much from Messina from this point. I think we'll see Jeremy Ngakia come in from next week. I think he'll know that when we've got fully fit centre halves, Craig Cathcart probably doesn't get a look in anymore. Juraj Kutska, I doubt we'll see much of him anymore, to be honest, if Ranieri's taken anything out of yesterday's game. So I think if we're putting positive spin on yesterday's 5-0 win, 5-0 defeat, it's hopefully in the long run we can look back on this game and be like, we need to change from what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we'll have a little read through your comments. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. It's one of those games where no one really likes to kind of reflect on it, but I think there's a lot of question marks really about this Watford team and the club in terms of you maybe harp it back to recruitment and whether we've had the discussion about Cisco, but the recruitment not really replacing Will Hughes and Nathaniel Chalobah in that area. That's done now, but there's certainly question marks over that area. I think there was, Sam, you mentioned Ben Foster. Should we just discuss that now before I forget? Yeah. It's if you didn't know, Ben Foster, he made some good saves actually, I thought, yesterday, but there was a few incidents, Sam, if you want to sum it up about what's happened in terms of him. It's happened a couple of times where he's invited his friends or YouTubers or celebrities into the stands. And in this one, he invited a Liverpool fan. I forgot the UFC fighter's name, so apologies. Invited him into the stands. He was a Liverpool fan in the home end, which for starters it shouldn't be allowed, really. Then celebrated the goal, then filmed him getting escorted out of the ground, then basically slagged off Watford's, calling us a horrible club, I think were the words he said. You lot are horrible, I hope you go down. And this is a man that Ben Foster invited into the Watford end. It's not a good look, is it, Sam? Not good.
Yeah, let's not forget as well, the first image at full time was him running up to Mo Salah asking for a shirt or wherever it was for his giveaway. Do you know what? I spoke about this a lot last season, and it was less of a problem when Foster wasn't in the team. But I don't think there's a game where he hasn't had a moment where he hasn't made a mistake in a long time. I think in every game he's played this season, he's made some good saves, but his kicking's been shocking. His positioning at times really questionable. If I'm looking at harsh, I know he couldn't do much about any of the goals yesterday, but if we're being harsh, I think perhaps he could have positioned himself better with the first goal, with Mane's goal.
Distribution for me is a big thing, mate. It was just inviting pressure on when we needed to relieve pressure. Yeah. And part of the game plan that Ranieri set up with yesterday, mate, as we discussed off air, was actually targeting Messina, who was drifting out to the left-hand side and basically positioning himself on Salahs. So he was looking to win the headers, but often one of the Liverpool midfielders would come across. But Messina was the man who was almost the outlet for us. That's what it was. It was absolutely clear that was Ranieri's plan. But I think there was only one time where I actually saw Foster find him. And
Yeah.
it was like some of the kicking was really poor. It was just sloppy.
Can I just say, I know,
From him as well, all over the pitch, it was just
yeah.
sloppy.
Yeah. I know we don't really want to correlate his performances of late to the GoPro and the YouTube channel and everything. But imagine if that was any other club with their performances like that, and we're looking in from the outside, and their goalkeeper's got a YouTube channel on the side and a podcast, and I fully accept that it does make people really happy, particularly during the lockdown. I enjoyed it. It made me feel close to the football club. There's a time and a place for it. We're in the Premier League now. We're struggling in the Premier League, and fans don't really want to see this stuff anymore, as in Watford fans at least. All right, he's got a big YouTube fan base, but as Watford fans, we don't want to see this anymore. We want to see players fully focused on their football. They're allowed to have sort of hobbies, but try not to make it as public. Make it as clear that you're focusing on the football club. And I mean, he's leaving at the end of the season, but for me, the sooner we get Daniel back and starting again, the better.
Yeah, it's one of the issues, particularly with yesterday, that I had. I think I just wanted to move on to Sam in terms of the performance yesterday. There was a couple of comments about the defence being weak, spineless at times in the midfield. I thought Sissoko had a good game from my point of view, Sam. But I think the biggest concern for me is I thought under Xisco we offered a lot more going forwards, and Ranieri didn't really find the system that he approached with didn't release our attacking players and the likes of Dennis and Sarr. How do we go about changing it? Because there was I never felt at any point in the game yesterday that we were going to score. I think we had our first shot in the 60th minute with Kutzka at Kelleher. I think Kelleher is a bright keeper, but to not test him at all, and it's his first game in a long time for Liverpool. It was bizarre. Really. He barely had a touch of the ball. It was just so easy, really, for Liverpool. And Liverpool were very good, but it was just how easy we made it for them.
I thought we looked. I think we looked. One area for me, we looked really light in midfield. I think that was an area for me that we set up badly. In particular, they didn't have Fabinho, who's arguably their main man in the middle, and they were playing the likes of Keita not out of position, but they wouldn't have been comfortable perhaps in that shape as they would have been with Fabinho. And we didn't even, they weren't so comfortable. I saw a stat or something like, how many passes did we complete in the first half? 50?
No, I think, funnily enough, mate, the first half we had 16% possession to Liverpool's 84, and we had 76 passes to Liverpool's 450. It was unbelievable.
Awful.
Unbelievable.
Awful that. And I don't really, it's mind Sarr shouldn't be playing up front. We know that. We've seen that for the 2-3 years he's played for us now, that he's not effective up front. He needs to be a wide man. I actually thought Cucho did okay yesterday. I wouldn't say he played well, but I think he looked like if anyone's going to make something happen, it would be him.
He was trying, wasn't he? He was
trying. And this is where the difficult thing comes in, because you mentioned the word trying, and I find it hard to say things like players aren't trying, because we're still discovering Ranieri. And I felt at times with Xisco, it wasn't a problem of a lack of trying; it was just poor coaching tactically and that sort of thing. And perhaps that's kind of a bit of a hangover. But I just thought some of them yesterday were just so off it. I mean, I'm not going to go too in on Danny Rose, because I really like Danny Rose. I think he had an absolutely fantastic season, but he was bullied yesterday by Salah. He was completely torn apart. Salah's world class, obviously, and Rose just looked a bit off it. And I feel sorry for him to an extent.
I absolutely agree with you, mate. I thought Danny Rose had a massive off day yesterday, just in terms of his positioning as well. But at the same time, why was he playing at left centre back?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there is some, just on that, some people are talking about this a bit in the comments. But we used to have such a settled team, and I think sort of an area that ultimately was the downfall of Harry Gracia was that the team were able to build relationships with each other, and everyone knew who'd be playing each week. Problem is now we're changing the formation every week, we're changing the personnel every week. No one's got an idea who's going to play. Could you name a starting 11 for Everton next week? No. Absolutely no idea. We don't even know who's going to be. We don't know who's going to be in goal. We don't know who's going to be at centre half, the full-backs, centre midfield. We don't know the formation. It's a massive problem. There's no opportunity to build relationships within the side. And
do you know the biggest concern for me, mate? This has given me flashbacks to Kiko 2.0.
Yeah. No, definitely. And
Not,
I think
not just yesterday. I mean, in terms of after Aston Villa, even Cisco, who had been at the club for what 8-9 months, didn't know his best team. Ranieri, I think it could be a completely different lineup next week. Obviously, he needs time. We have to give him time, but we know the Pozzos don't give managers a whole lot of time. But Sam, it's how much do we read into yesterday, or is this a bigger picture for Watford? Because look, we come up against a team that will be challenging for the league come the end of the season. They've got, as you said, the best attacker in the world on form in Mo Salah. They dominated from start to finish. There's no shame in losing to Liverpool. There's no shame in getting, to be honest, thrashed by Liverpool because of how good they are. But the manner in which we lost the game, there is shame in that, because there was at no point did we lay a glove on Liverpool. So how much are you concerned by the performance in terms of, are you looking at the bigger picture and going, this has been coming for a while, this kind of battering, or actually is it just a case of it was Liverpool, we have to take it with a pinch of salt in terms of the performance?
it's a bit of both, I think. I think, as I said again, I was confident. I thought we'd win yesterday. Combination of the early kickoff, lack of Alisson and Fabinho, and the new manager bounce, I just thought we'd win. And Liverpool aren't too great at Vicarage Road normally, but I think for me the best way to say it, and that this is a reflection on the Pozzo kind of strategy as a whole, is that if I said to you, we got, I think, 2-3 games before the international break, if we put in similar performances for those next 2-3 games, would you be shocked if the Pozzos pulled the trigger again in a month's time? I think that for me is the best way to sum up the performance. It was that bad. I think there's already pressure on Ranieri. I think they would look at that yesterday, and I think they would be worried. And I'm not saying he'll be sacked this week, because he won't. But if we look at someone like Billy McKinley, who was, won a couple of games and still got sacked that week, I'm not saying he will be sacked, but I think there is pressure on him already.
Do you think this is? Do you think the fact that we're thinking about that is almost a case of we've got to the point as Watford fans where we're constantly thinking? I don't want to speak about for everyone, but I certainly got into a mind frame or mindset which was like, it is the manager's responsibility, but actually, our number one, are the players good enough? Is it too early to say are they good enough? And number two, how much responsibility do they have to take? Because regardless of the way you set up, I still think the basics and the fundamentals out of possession were just not there yesterday. I know it's a cliche, but I've genuinely seen better at Sunday League level sometimes. I mean, the positioning of the back three was all over the shop. There was no cohesion with the midfield, which is what we've seen so far this season. And this is under two different managers. And granted, it is only one game under Ranieri, but there were similar themes, particularly defensively, that had emerged way before Ranieri had come in, even in the Championship.
They've been there for 3 years now. We when we got relegated, what was it, 2-3 years ago now? The problem was that we had Craig Cathcart at centre half, Adam Messina at left back, who weren't good enough. We lined up the same way yesterday. They're 2 years older. Liverpool have got stronger. We're getting worse. Our team now is worse than the one that got relegated 2 years ago. We had the settled midfield in there. We had Abdoulaye Doucouré, Etienne Capoue, Will Hughes, with these players who look like they could take the game by the scruff of the neck. I don't know how we got relegated thinking about it. It was poor coaching, but, Deulofeu, Sarr, this team, what do they offer? It's just, I'm sorry, we travel around the country every single week. I had to go all the way back to Birmingham yesterday after the game. And I'm just sat there thinking, for what? It's rubbish to watch. I hate watching us at the moment. I loved going to that Villa game. Norwich was good, but it was a straightforward win. I don't think I've enjoyed many games this season. Leeds was, we've said for 3 weeks in a row now that was the worst performance of the season. Newcastle at home was absolutely awful. Leeds away was one of the worst I've ever seen. Yesterday was abysmal. And that we haven't even spoken about Brighton away. We haven't spoken about Tottenham away. It's just been awful to watch this season. And people might say it's reactionary. It's not, because we could have seen from a mile away at the start of the season that this was coming. And I've had enough, and it's difficult to watch. And the annoying thing is we're all, we'll be at Everton next week doing the exact same thing, and we'll come away and probably lose that as well, because these players aren't good enough. And I can't see us learning, because it's been 2 years and these players aren't learning.
Callum in the comment section, evening boys, yesterday was shocking. The players need to take some responsibility now. It's becoming a joke. The team we got relegated with is so far better than our current first 11. We're a joke. It's an interesting comment there. I think
the team that got relegated would beat this team 4-0. They'd hammer them. Convinced of it.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a golfing class in there. I saw a few more comments. Thank you to everyone who's watching, by the way. Lou Warnes in the comment section says, and make sure you do go and read some of his stuff, some great stuff on his blog page. If the head coach keeps changing, it ultimately comes down to the players not being good enough. They don't know how to identify a head coach, and they don't know how to assemble a squad. Sam, you mentioned about the kind of the back line issue, which we've mentioned before, and we've brought in Kulu, but again, it seems a little bit last gasp. It seems desperate, almost a last-ditch tackle to kind of save this back line because it's just not been good enough. And someone made a really interesting point. I think it was the other day about Ivic saying actually it was very impressive with a similar back line, granted in the Championship, but how well drilled he has us defensively. I mean, we look a shadow of that defence that he built in the Championship in that short stay he had, but. What do you make of that comment there from Lou Warnes? Is there a bigger pitch that we need to have a look at here, Watford fans, about in terms of changing the manager? Is that covering up for actually poor recruitment?
Yeah, but there's a massive question by the Pozzos, and we knew that. No, I don't think any sane Watford fan is Pozzo out. They've ultimately taken our club to this level consistently, where they've raised the expectations to here. So I don't think any sane Watford fan would want the Pozzos out at this point. However, I think they are ultimately covering over for themselves for a lack of investment in the defence for 3 or 4 years now, even longer if you want to look at it like that as well. The head coach model, I said it doesn't need to change, and it's too early to judge Ranieri, so I'm not going to comment on that for now. But there are big questions that need to be asked, to Gino Pozzo, Scott Duxbury. Who's the new lad in there as well? Giuretta as well. So I suppose we'll see. Time will tell. But
I think the big thing for me, mate, sorry to jump in there. I think the big thing for me is I don't feel Watford have had an identity in terms of the recruitment strategy since Marco Silva was at the club. Because when in that summer, first off, it was the one appointment in a while where I think a lot of Watford fans wanted it to happen when he had just left Hull, when he was one of the kind of most exciting coaches in the Premier League at the time. But then we recruited not only to his style of play in terms of, but we were recruiting young players and giving them the opportunity and then going, look, if you can prove yourself and get the recognition, then we can move you on. Chalobah was a good example. Hughes was a good example. Richarlison, another example. I think. But then you still had the same problems that we're seeing in terms of we then bought Andre Gray when Silva wanted Mitrovic or Slimani, and it's like the same problems of I think because you rotate a head coach, you're basically relying on the coach getting the most out of the players and exhausting everything from the players. Whereas when you get in a head coach that brings in his own players, it means that they're matching the style that they want to create and that the manager's got control of that. But we know that's not how the Pozzos operate. But ultimately, it's, I feel, is it a lack of identity a fair comment, Sam, do you believe?
Yeah, I think we had...
In terms of the style of play.
I think it's difficult to say because it was in the Championship, but I did think that we had some sort of identity under Xisco Munoz last season. I think we even had an identity under Vladimir Ivic, which ultimately was tedious, and the players didn't really, kind of suit it, and that kind of died down. But
what's the recruitment strategy, Sam? What when you look at the players that we signed over the summer, I'll get a list of them up here. What would you say we're looking to do? Because I struggle to get behind the idea that there was a clear plan of what we're trying to do with this squad. So, Sam, let me just read you the list of the players. I know this is going way off topic from yesterday, but look, we could talk through the 5 goals all day long. You look at the players that we brought in, Sam, right? All arrivals, here we go. Transfer market coming in clutch. I can't remember all the names. So we brought in Imran Louza, who was our record signing, has barely played. Emmanuel Dennis, who looked bright. Musa Sissoko, Ozan Tufan, Pollock, King, Rose, Fletcher, Bar, Atibo, Kutska, and Kulu.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what's the plan with that recruitment. I actually cannot tell you. Like, what are we buying for?
Because the thing is, right, if I look at a team, two teams for me that stick out with a kind of transfer structure. First one, Crystal Palace, signing Gahey, Anderson, Elise, Edward, Will Hughes. It's those sorts of players who are young or entering their prime, that sort of thing. The other club is Brentford, who finished below us.
Great
It seemed absolutely miles ahead of us this season. They were, I know they lost yesterday, but they were brilliant. And every game they've played against the top six, they've contested against them, and they've looked brilliant. They drew with Liverpool a few weeks ago. We got absolutely battered by them.
Yeah.
And it's a question about recruitment because it's a transfer topic one, but I think yesterday just answers all the questions of why we ask certain questions, why the head coach is constantly under scrutiny, why the players are under scrutiny. People ask, you can't turn on the players of your own club. I think we can at certain points. We're not turning on them. We're frustrated as fans. And I think we have every right to be with the way that we follow them around the country, the way that, the money that people put in to go and see them, the lack of application at times from the players, players who have GoPros in the goal and stop vlogging in the middle of games. I think we do have a right to be annoyed.
Oh my God. It's actually, no, because when you put it like that, it's just, yeah. Michael in the comments, it's a slapdash policy of buying. Throw several players against the wall and hopefully one or two stick. Did anyone really think 34-year-old Kutsker is going to make a difference in the midfield?
The drop off from him, by the way, I know I said at the start, but it was unbelievable that first day against Villa. I think we said, and I stick by it, it's probably one of the best debuts I've ever seen at Watford. And since then, yesterday was absolutely shocking. Leeds was abysmal from him. So poor.
You know what? I think he's a classic example of peaking too early.
Yeah. Perhaps he set too high of a bar for himself, but
he looks. I think there was a point in the first half where like fans were starting to get on the back of him, and because he was just so off the pace. Holly, in a more positive light. Great to see you, Holly. Positive scraping here. Ozan, Tufan, and Loser will have been training all this week with the team. King may be back. Pedro and Ngakia look decent. Must see changes. This is Everton.
I think for me there were three positives yesterday in terms of players wise. I thought Ngakia, as I said earlier, was brilliant. He has to come in. I thought Sissoko had a really good game as well. I know I mentioned the midfield, but that's perhaps more down to the shape of the team rather than personnel. I thought Sissoko had a good game, and I also thought João Pedro looked really good when he came on. He looked sharp. He looked like he was winning balls in the air. I think João's another one who has to come in for next week.
Yeah, as AB says in the comments, Sissoko, João Pedro, and Ngakia were great. I thought Ngakia was very good when he came on. It deserves a start. I thought Sissoko, again, probably the best performance.
People disagree with me, Jacob, but what do you think of Kiko Femenea at the moment?
I think defensively, Ngakia is the better fullback, and we're going to have less. We have less of the ball in the Premier League, so you have to go for the better defender. Kiko's better on the ball, absolutely, but I think Ngakia, what he offers defensively, and he's not poor going forward by any stretch. I think Kiko's better, but Ngakia, number one, his tackling is brilliant, and number two, I always feel a lot more confident in a one-on-one situation with Ngakia. Whereas Kiko, I feel he can just be a little bit. Well, number one, his positioning was all over the shop, and number two, I mean, at one point he was like on the halfway line, wasn't he? He was like playing like right wing, but he'd obviously been told to do that. Do you know what I mean, Sam? There was positions yesterday where I thought you wouldn't do that without being told to do that. So clearly, we had told the two fullbacks, look, push onto the halfway line and push us up as far as possible. Yeah, and then it left just a massive gap in that inside forwards area for Mane and Salahs to exploit, and that's where the first goal came from. It was frustrating.
A brilliant shout, by the way, that one. And Ngakia reminds me of Wan-Bissaka.
Hey, who said that?
That is such. Did you say? I can't. That is a.
I said that his way he tackles is like, is like Wan-Bissaka. Sam, how long have you got, by the way, mate? Do you need to go?
I've got 5 minutes or so. We can.
5 minutes. Okay. If there's any final questions, guys, before we head off, but I think. Yeah, it's Ngakia isn't far behind Kiko, and his potential far exceeds Kiko. Absolutely, I can.
Have a look at our fixtures coming up quickly.
Yeah, look. So we'll have a look at what the fixtures are saying. So far we've played a 1-2, drawn 1, and lost 5, and we've played, I guess, two of the big six in Liverpool and Spurs, and Brighton have been kind of the informed surprise package this season, but. there's been harder 8 games. I mean, look at Brentford's, for example. But looking at the next games, and let's have a look at the next 4, Sam. The next 3 to the international break. We'll go Everton away, Southampton at home, and Arsenal away. How many points do we need to be picking up from those, mate?
4.
4.
Realistically.
Is that minimum, or is that?
That's a minimum for me because of the kind of the spiral we're going down. I think for me, a positive was that people kind of forgot how bad Newcastle actually were because of the takeovers covered things over. I think they're in big trouble this season. Best wishes to the Newcastle fan as well, who unfortunately was taken into hospital today as well. Realistically, 1 could get a point home to Southampton. Can't see us winning next week. I know Everton lost today, but they're a good side. Southampton, they won yesterday. It's a difficult game, and Arsenal can't see us getting anything there, even though we are all right at the Emirates at times. But I just feel down thinking about Watford at the moment. Watching us is just depressing. I'm going to Everton next week. I'm excited for the away day. I'm excited for the actual game. No, we'll probably poor performance and lose.
Someone that needs to come back in, do you think, Clevs, Kutzka?
Yeah, everyone knows I'm a massive fan of Clevs. It's just, for me, it's about the setup of the team because we have to play to Clevs' strengths if we play Clevs. I think we have to be a 3, it can't be a 2. Yeah, I can't see Ranieri playing with a 3, so if Cleverley doesn't come back in for me, yeah.
Sure. So it's just to go back onto that recruitment chat, some really interesting comments here. Sean says, recruitment strategy was to balance the books after a 35 million odd loss. Absolutely. Yeah. Sean, but my point is not in terms of the money we're spending. I'm not expecting us to spend a lot of money. I think it's more in terms of what players are we going for. I don't know what was it for Xisco Munoz system? Was it just the players that we can buy cheap and stay in the Premier League? As someone said here, the recruitment strategy was simply to spend the bare minimum in order to stay up. And Michael makes an interesting point, Sam. I'll throw this over to you. Is Watford an attractive club anymore? The manager changes every 6 months and we haven't done anything in the Premier League. I mean, I don't agree with the last part because we haven't done anything in the Premier League. But if you were a prospective manager, let's just say you had your UEFA A badges, you thought, you know what, Watford are going to come to me. And you're not a Watford fan, Sam. Well, how would you look at that job? How would you look on the outside?
I think it is attractive because I think, first of all, I think Ranieri made a point, particularly for foreign managers, it's much more normal abroad for the Pots. The Pozzo kind of network is much more common in places like Italy and even in Spain. I don't know if that was just to cover them up, but Ranieri said that was an element that he wasn't worried about. But you have to bear in mind as well, we are a Premier League club, fantastic facilities, brilliant training grounds, lovely stadium, close to London. So I think, that is, and it's an area as well to get into the spotlight, I think, because if you don't do well and you get sacked, then everyone will go, fair enough, it's Watford, they sack everyone. If you do well, then you attract a bigger club. So I do think there is an appeal in there, but it's a whole nother conversation whether it's working still, the kind of the infrastructure of the club.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more comments. Callum says, I do love the Pozzos. Getting rid of Xisco was the right decision. But like you say, the way they run the club isn't sustainable. And how are we going to progress as a club if we're just going round in circles? Lou Orn says, should have never sacked Grassi or Ivic. Should have backed both of them rather than sticking up for players.
Ivic is the one for me.
Yeah, Ivic.
We backed the players there when we probably should have backed the manager. I know we got promoted under Xisco, and we probably wouldn't have got promoted under Ivic, but I think that's just the prime examples of where the players won.
Yeah. Final comments before we wrap up. Sam, look, you said a minimum of 4 points for next week. How confident are you? Well, I mean, probably confident at an all-time.
I don't think anyone is confident. Based on what are you confident? Based on what? What has anyone seen in the last 3 games across the Newcastle game, across the Leeds game, and across yesterday to make you confident at all?
Do you know what? This comment, I think, sums up my feelings toward it. This defeat was like the heavy Man City loss in 2019. Not the same scoreline, but the feeling after it was a deflation that we are not very good.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That feeling inside where you're like, this is going to be a long season. We've got to come out there.
Yeah, no, exactly.
That's why I feel it's giving me flashbacks to Kiko this already. Not in terms of the manager, not in terms of the managers, just in terms of the performance I've seen this season have had zero direction. Very little direction. Apart from that opening day against Villa, Norwich are reporting that we should be beating.
And it's become apparent, by the way, with that first day of the season, that it was more because Villa were poor than we were good. I think we were good that day, but I think Villa was so off the pace as well.
So look, there's a lot of questions. We kind of went a little bit off topic from the Liverpool defeat. I don't think we want to be talking about all 5 goals. But to be fair, there's been a lot of chat about clapping Salah's goal, but it was an incredible goal from Mo Salah. Do you reckon that might be on the Puskas Award, that one?
Do you know what? It's weird because I didn't see it. I could see it, but I thought it took just a deflection off Cathcart. I couldn't actually see a ridiculous skip.
Well, Cathcart dived in when he was on his right foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be honest, at this point, I do feel sorry for Cathcart in the sense that every time he's played Salah, whether it's been Britos, I think Cathcart was in that 5-0 defeat as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
He's just not. I mean, Salah's record against Watford is ridiculous as well. I think he's scored something like some crazy amount.
We're looking at 12 goals or so, probably.
Crazy. Perfect comments to wrap up. Chin up, lads. Here's the next week. Everton away. Sam will be there. I won't be there, but we'll have plenty of content here on WD18 for a match preview. And thank you very much for joining us tonight. It's a difficult one to take. It's one that we have to take and keep our heads up and move on to the next one. Ranieri's first game as Watford head coach ends in defeat. If you enjoyed today's stream, please do leave a like. I've not enjoyed it, but if you thought it was decent, please leave a like. Subscribe to WD18. Comment down below your thoughts. We'll catch you next week. Have a great week, guys. Take care of yourselves. We'll speak to you soon.